I'm doing very well.
Oh, hello.
Good. Hey, how are you?
Good, good.
You got to blame
Good.
Vung. He's got your voice sounding like Bugs Bunny.
He's kidding.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I can't hear the melodious tones of my voice.
It just keeps repeating, "What's up, Doc?" That's all we know. Is Miss Dorothy on? Dorothy?
I'm gonna see her. She haven't on yet.
Okay.
I'm texting her after. Oh, I'm so stupid. I just told Spence that Mr. Mooney was coming in, but he's not coming in because they're gonna have him on maybe. Never mind.
He's on video.
The other thing is here.
She will be on video.
All right, we're just missing Dorothy. Dorothy's not on yet, I don't believe, right?
She is here, I think.
Dorothy?
I'm
Yeah,
here.
She's on.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. See, you're hiding from us. We can't get everybody. So it's a little bit different. Right now, we looks like the crowd's going to be really, really tiny. So because we want to be able to operate with the interview at 8 o'clock, we're going to try to stay in one location so we don't have to move around a whole bunch. And right now, we're operating off the boardroom table. Can everybody hear me?
I'm having a problem.
You're having problems? Listen,
I can't hear you.
We tested it
We
at
tested
that time,
it.
everybody.
all right, how
My
about
volume
that?
is already,
Is that better?
that's better.
Okay. And I don't know if this system does like a walkie-talkie where one person has to stop talking before the other people can talk. Is that true or not true?
We can have everybody mute while you're speaking.
Oh, no. I just want to see,
We can have a both way conversation, not just one way.
not just one. So it's not a true
But
walkie-talkie.
could Councilwoman Knight and Dean and Tran all be talking at the same time
Yes,
and we hear
yes,
them all?
definitely.
Okay, so it's like a true conference call where
True
everybody's in there one way or another. Okay. Well, with that being said, let's welcome to the April 14th, 2020 work session. Everyone has had their agendas. Are there any comments about either the work session agenda or the regular session just off the top? Ms.
Yes, so
Reddick?
I'll jump in right here, thank you, Mayor. We do have a couple of spelling errors that will be corrected, and they're in item 8 of the work session, of the work session minutes from March 24th. Should have had a comment about the discussion about 4-year degrees, a 4-year degree being required. So when if everybody's agreeable to to those spelling corrections and that addition to item number 8, when you pass the agenda, the meeting minutes on the agenda, we would just be asked that we make the motion with corrections. If anybody has any concerns or questions, just let me know.
Is everyone okay with that?
Okay.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
I'm
Ms. Knight?
sorry. For, the 24th work session, you're saying?
Yeah, March 24th, the minutes to the work session. Item number 8.
Okay.
Ms. Knight, you good with that?
Yeah.
And I heard Ben, so there you go. All right, so,
Yes, I'm good with that.
okay. So we'll start with just the regular discussion in the work session portions. So the first one, municipal solicitor. Jerry Patrick's been the city solicitor for a number of years. I think with the arbitration situation that we solved, or at least are trying, then that doesn't, that alleviates any issue that I would have with Jerry Patrick being reappointed to solicitor. And unless there's other objections or other comments, he is on item number 3, and that would be to appoint Jerry Patrick as the municipal solicitor. Any questions or concerns? Ms. Van,
No concern.
Ms. Knight,
None at this time.
Ms. Dean?
No concerns.
Cool.
I'm good.
And then the Justice Creek Construction Administration, I think we went over that before, right?
Well, if I may, we have talked about it before. When we did phase 2, as most of us know or have heard, we had some missteps that were made by the construction team, and that cost us, a path system we had to go into litigation over it. So what we don't want to do is move forward with no engineering oversight for the construction of phase 3, okay? So the people that designed it, Pond and Company, they offered construction administration services, and it's in your packet, to the tune of $42,000. So, and that only included like 6 site visits. GDOT suspects the construction will take as many as 13 months. So 6 site visits over 13 months, it's just not enough to make sure things are going the way they should. You'll also see a proposal from Mark Whitley, who is a local engineer. I say local, he's out of Locust Grove, I think, or Hampton. And he's done some oversight work with us during the litigation. So he submitted a $35,000 proposal. And then from Keckenwood, who was the company that worked with us with the intersection design, they submitted a proposal, but they did, if you see, they did a maximum of $6,500 per month. Well, over 13 months, that's all of a sudden getting close to $80,000. So my recommendation is that we hire Mark Whitley as the construction administration, which we need a construction administration on task before we go to the construction phase. But if for any reason along the way the council feels like he's not doing his job, we would have the opportunity to hire somebody else, but it might get tricky because depending on what the retainer is and all that kind of stuff. I say that to say is that sometimes council gets concerned about choosing somebody for a project that's gonna last a year, but that's sort of how it works with construction administration, and Mayor Lample, you could probably speak more to that than anybody else, including myself. So I'm not comfortable with Pond because I don't think 6 site visits over a year is enough. And I asked them, Mayor Lample, we had talked about the opportunity for them to increase the number of site visits without necessarily increasing the number of the amount, but they wouldn't do that. So, and I just think with Keckenwood, it's too much of a gamble, up to a maximum of $6,500 a month, but if it lasts, like I said, for 13 months. So my recommendation is to go with Mark Whitley. So I did want to make sure everybody was clear. You see 3 proposals in your work session because this is discussion. But on the agenda, my recommendation is Mark Whitley. That's why his is the only proposal attached to the regular meeting agenda.
And that's number 5, for those of you that are looking for it. So you've got the 3 proposals. Any comments? Councilwoman Tran?
No comment.
Councilwoman Knight?
So, going off of scope of work and expectations for a project, I know the city's worked with Whitley Engineering previously on the other components of the path system, but he's very clear to the extent of oversight that's needed over the period of time. I mean, because I can appreciate $35,000 is a deal, but, just wanted to make sure that over the period of time and the depth of oversight that's needed, is he clear what needs to be done?
Well, we could certainly condition the approval of his proposal on, whatever, and this is sort of where it's outside of our collective wheelhouse, how many times is enough? And I don't know that we have a hard, fast number, but we could certainly say that he's required to set eyes on the project once a week. Cause he's local and he's around the area, or twice a month, whatever we wanted to do. That language, I think in his proposal it says as needed. So if we wanna define as needed a little bit more specifically, we certainly can do that.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Knight?
So, yes, yeah. I mean, I appreciate the price, of course, but, you know, I don't want it to be a project where it's, you know, we go for a bargain, but the depth of what is needed to make sure is, you know, completed properly, on time, whatever the case may be. You know, we're a couple of months in, and then the scope of what is needed becomes too much. I just wouldn't want that situation.
And I appreciate you saying that, because I don't recommend Whitley because he's the least expensive, because in effect, if Keckenwood does less than $6,500 a month, they could actually be cheaper overall, but we wouldn't know that with them until we got to the end of the project. My biggest concern is that he's the most local and would have more opportunities to visit the site than the other two, Keckenwood or Pond and Company.
Are you good with that answer, Ms. Knight?
Is she having trouble?
Renee?
Can you hear me? I said I'll work with it. Thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm sorry, that's good. Ms. Dean, any comments?
Just one, this is a previous, firm that we had before on phase 2.
No, this was this was the gentleman that we hired to oversee the repairs when we decided to repair the path instead of to move forward with the litigation. He was the engineer we hired to oversee those repairs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm okay.
Well,
I'm good.
and one thing is based on the experience that we had on the repairs on the second phase, obviously it wouldn't have been installed correctly. One additional value to him outside of potentially pricing is he knew where they made their mistakes, right? So we don't want to recreate those. You know, we might create some new ones, but that would be the installer and then him overseeing that. So he'd know immediately what to look for before they go out and lay, you know, 800 feet of, you know, boardwalk that's not going to be
That's not
the
even the right
subtype
word,
one.
right.
Yeah, so and that was pretty much the reasoning that failed last time, is the boards were put too close together and they didn't follow the manufacturer specs.
Well,
So-
and for argument, we will never know if the boards were put too close together, but because they used the wrong wood, it rotted. So we're not gonna go back, well, we did, we just went back and put them close together and used the right wood. So now we'll see if the design, because if the litigation, the stipulation to the litigation is they would only rebuild it exactly as it was designed. A redesign, they wouldn't have redone it. We would have had to go to litigation. So it was put back exactly the way it was originally designed, just using the correct wood.
Interesting. So then they might have a case
I have a
against somebody
question.
else. Okay, all right.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Dorothy?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, I didn't quite understand, Sylvia, you were saying about, previously the company said that they would only make repairs according to the previous design. What did you say about this? What do we need, going forward?
So, in phase 2, the path that's already out there, the company that installed
Right.
it, which was the Georgia Development
Right.
Partners, right? They would only put it back exactly the way they had designed it. Or that, Jordan Jones and Goulding had, the way they
Right.
built it to begin with. Phase 3, we don't have, it's been designed by Pond and Company, but it's not been built yet. So we're, just to make
Yeah,
sure we're
doing
not
oversight
confusing
on the
it. Yeah.
one that has not been built.
We're talking
Okay.
about oversight for the one that has yet to be built, that we hope to go to construction in June. if everything goes well.
Right, and we've already
Right,
approved
okay.
that contract, right? So this,
Okay.
no?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so this is just the oversight, and it is on the formal agenda,
Okay.
as item number 5.
Okay.
So it's approval of construction administration
yeah.
for, Whitley Engineering in the amount of $34.75. So, other questions? Okay, barring none, next item, firefighter, Mr. Martin, discussion. And I think that's related to Mr. Martin was called up in the Georgia National Guard, and under state code, he has the ability to ask for additional pay. It's not a lot, it's like $75 a pay period, if I remember right.
Well, under our policy, it allows us to approve supplemental pay, and I'm asking that the council pay, it's like 74, whatever it is in the packet,
77.45.
almost $75 per pay period, that just makes him whole. So when he gets his National Guard pay, he's not missing out.
$77.45,
$77.45 per pay period for every 2 weeks. Now, I will tell you that we just got notification today that firefighter Martin has been released from National Guard duty. So should he, once he's tested and is cleared to come back to work, this actually may not be for any length of time, but it would be retrospective to when he was called up. So it's just your approval for roughly $75 every 2 weeks to supplement his salary while he serves in the National Guard, which our policy allows us to do, if you guys approve it.
Okay. Any comments? Ms. Knight? Ms. Dean? Ms. Van? Ms.
I'm
Train?
okay with that.
Okay, well, you good?
I'm good.
All right, and it is item number 6 on the agenda, so we'll take care of that. Next item is Georgia Power proposal, and I'm gonna have the city manager talk to this.
Did you intend to skip over the online payment?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I was over here scraping down different things, sorry about that. All right, so your online payment services, just backing up one. Obviously with the COVID-19, what we're gonna call it, quarantine or other things, a number of our services are now being considered to be paid online that might not have been paid in the past. And we have some pricing to be able to do that. And go ahead.
So currently, the only payment you can take online at City Hall is for traffic tickets, and that's through our courtware system. In person, the convenience fee for that payment is 4% of the payment. If you do it online, it's 6%. This is a separate opportunity through QS1 to install some online payment options. And the reason it says up to 2.95% convenience fee is because depending on which credit card you use, it may be 2.6, it may be 2.7, it can't be more than 2.95. So the cost to that service, and it would include payments for sanitation, property tax, business license, basically everything we don't currently take payments for online, is a fee of $125 per month. Now, when you look at your packet, you may have noticed that there was an option for a $75 per month fee, but that doesn't allow the customer to see sort of an itemized what they're paying for. And that's why we would want to recommend the $125 a month fee so that the customer could see the details of their payment.
Questions?
So it costs us $125 per month
Per
from
month.
city,
Yes, sir.
and it costs the user, whoever paying the 2.95.
Between 2.6 and 2.95, yes, sir.
That's like a credit card processing fee.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because it's either we pay or they pay.
Minimum amount,
Well, it gives them the ability, they still can send it in if they want to, but it gives them
Well,
the ability to pay it.
there wouldn't be a minimum amount because, well, let me say it this way. currently, we don't allow people to make payments on things, they have to pay the whole amount. So, you know, whatever we issue the bill for, but, you know, I now hear your question more clearly. Say, for example, if someone got a property tax bill for $1. We've seen it happen. Could they go online and pay it? Well, yeah, but it would be their choice, but would they wanna pay, you know, 2.95% of that dollar on top of that? So there's no minimum payment unless we wanted to set up a minimum payment. That would really be up to you
Somebody else
guys.
more process
Yeah.
than us, but that's on them, they
Yeah.
didn't set up a minimum. In other words, they don't have
Yeah.
a minimum in the contract, right?
Yeah, no.
No. Didn't-
My
Have
question
you
was
had an
that with,
opportunity to look at the platform, any reports that come off the platform based on payments and invoices? What kind of reconciling platform does it provide?
I don't know that, but we can find out.
usually things like that, I should have, we would be able to report, a 4-hour report from the portal and then match with, our, cash register, or, if go to GL, you can reconcile.
And you're saying that
Right,
usually
you would
happens
need
on.
to
And,
know.
that's we will have to double check and see what
Good job, Frank.
kind of report can we pull out from the.
Correct.
portal.
Correct, because you're providing this platform, it's taking information, but of course you would need to be able to take the information about the payments out if notices need to be updated or sent. If there is an opportunity for a minimum payment, creating kind of like a payment plan, so to speak, I mean, you would need to be able to know what the reports look like.
Well, and what I can say based on, if you remember, a couple of months back, we talked about just how lacking the QS1 reporting mechanisms are. I would suspect it, whatever we're gonna look at, we're not gonna be pleased with, because even currently, what we use it for doesn't report well. So, you know, this would certainly be more of a short-term solution, because what we hope is that in the coming months, we're gonna be looking at a new software anyway, which you will be discussing with your new finance director, Angela Hudson.
Other comments?
So you're saying that this is a temporary solution for,
No,
what's
the
going on
ons-
now as far as the
No,
virus
Ms. Dean,
virus is concerned?
now the solution is more permanent. How it records back to your financial software is what would potentially change, right?
Yeah, the service is permanent. The provider, the vendor we use is likely to be temporary, because I suspect you guys are gonna be deciding on something other than QS1. So the service is permanent, but the vendor will likely be temporary.
Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Back to the question is the minimal payment, like say if somebody have a balance less than $10, is the fee still going to be 2.95%, or they require a minimal fee?
No,
Or the fee is
the
always
convenience fee,
2.95%?
yes. Depending on the card you're using, the convenience fee will not be waived for a smaller amount, because if the customer doesn't pay it, the city has to. The transaction using a credit card requires the convenience fee, so if they're not paying it, we would be.
But her question is, there is the minimum charge requirement from the processor, that there isn't, right?
You know, like
Yeah.
a $5 minimum fee or something like
Yeah.
that to process
Okay.
something.
I mean, do I know if they're available? I can't answer that, but this proposal doesn't consider that, but we can certainly Q&A about it. I mean, you guys don't have to vote on this tonight at all, it's just, with this COVID-19 environment, we're just trying to make people, expand the services they can have without coming to the office.
Makes sense.
So $125 a month and 2.95% is the maximum the credit card provider will charge us.
We'll charge them. We're charging, that's a processing fee we're charging.
Customer.
as the, in other words, the customer's paying the fee, we're just paying the $125 a month. In normal credit card
Councilwoman,
transaction,
if
it's
the
built,
customer
it's
opts to
built
use the
in.
portal, they're going to pay the processing and transaction fee, they're going to pay it.
That's correct,
It's
just
gonna
like the
add
state
on
of
to,
Georgia.
$100 bill plus, a few extra dollars, $3.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, state of Georgia does the same thing, when you pay the
Yeah.
driver's license, you
That's
pay
pretty-
everywhere else, it says, if you choose to use this portal, it's gonna cost you that fee, and we just know that fee
If
for
you
them.
don't want to pay the $3, then you go in person and drop your payment off.
Correct,
Or mail it,
Correct.
or mail it,
or mail it. And
which is kinda how we're doing it now.
Just giving them another option.
But the only cost to us is the 125.
Yeah.
But based on the current environment, I think people would take because it's very traditional anyway, I think it's just a great option. And how long is this contract good for?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
1 year?
But the rate is pretty standard.
Would you prefer it to be on?
The information provides an annual service cost total,
Okay.
and it
So
says
that's
first
$1,000
year,
bucks.
so first year total cost, are they saying it would be a different cost after year one?
Well, we could use somebody else after year
Yeah.
one if we chose to.
They couldn't up the charge without coming back to us for approval, so.
A reputable company, somebody
I
that
mean,
they use.
QS1, we've been using them.
But,
One last question.
yeah, shoot,
So when the customer use the service, will they have to pay back 2.95% directly when they make the payment, or the credit card processing company will charge that 2.95% to us? Or it will charge directly to the customer, and we never have to deal with that.
Should be added up.
fee?
it's charged directly to the customer right there. All we're getting a bill for is $125 a month. Their bill would be 100 plus $2.97 or whatever it is.
Same thing with, how you go to pay your traffic citation or whatever violation, you have to pay certain amount fee if you choose to pay online. So they ask you before you.
Convenience
You
of that.
decide.
You're paying the convenience fee for that opportunity. You pay that,
It's
so citizens will pay that.
Yeah, it's pretty much just like credit card processing fee. That same
The
thing.
reason I ask that because I have worked with a credit card provider before, and some provider won't take the fee directly from the customer. They will charge to us, and the
So it's happening.
I'm saying. I
The
didn't
city
ask that
should be-
question specifically.
will have to be inter-account to add as a fee. But if you're sure that the provider has a portal where when the customer go there, it will charge
Sounds like we need to put this on next.
fee that they have to, the amount that they have to pay, and extra 2.95% fee, and I'm good with that. Let's make it easier. We just make a payment for 125 a month.
Well, let's do this.
But,
Yeah,
but
it's
let you make
option
sure
A
and
on
check with
page
them,
two.
because
If
a
that's
different,
the thing, we can make the approval conditional.
credit card
It's
providers.
option A on page
There's
2.
no questions here.
In our packet of information, they have the different options. It's option A, fee paid by customer.
But what Van is saying is something different.
But obviously, we want the fee paid by the customer.
But yeah, the question is do they pay it and then we cut a check to the credit card company and the vendor? Or does it get sucked up from the internet vortex and we never deal with it? That's really what I think.
That's how it should be, but we don't know.
We don't know, because I didn't ask that question. So if we need an answer to that question, I'd feel more comfortable if we put it on the next agenda.
Let's do that. It's 2 weeks, I realize that. We know we have a proposal that certainly implies that it goes a certain way. But in the event that it doesn't, and we could pass this a couple ways. We could pass it on the condition that it actually is paid right there by the folks, but let's ask that question. In the event that it's not, does that change your mind? If it doesn't change your mind, and we're just simply paying it once and getting it back from the company, you know, because the real issue is being able to do an online payment, right? So I guess that would be the question. We could do it with the condition that it's paid, you know, by the individual making the bill payment.
And we're not involved in
And
it.
we're not involved in it at
This
all.
fee of 2.95% covers the transaction fees as assessed by the credit card companies, as well as all expenses that public incurs in the handoff processing of data. That's not clear.
Who's responsible for the payment is clear. I feel like Councilwoman Tran, and if I'm misspeaking, please tell me, is asking, is it an additional transaction for the city to make sure that the credit card fee is getting it? I get that the customer pays for it, but I didn't ask if they pay for it via us.
But she's right, she's
Okay,
right.
good.
When you do that, when it says fee paid by that, you're right, Ms. Knight, because it says it's added to the bill and paid by the utility customer at the time of the online transaction.
Okay.
It's
So
right
then
there
you-
on the bottom of page 2.
So
Got it?
if y'all are clear with it, I'm good with it. I just
Well,
didn't
that's-
want to imply that I have asked the question, because I have not.
They wrote it, that's about as straight, I mean, and paid by the utility customer at the time of the online transaction. I would take that as about as straightforward as we can get. So that would answer the question. Other questions, Ms. Tran?
That we are sure that the credit card providers, processing provider is able to charge the fee directly to the customer.
Yep.
I'm good with that.
Yep. All right. Ms. Knight, any other questions?
None for me at this time.
Yeah, good pointing out on the documents there, Ms. Knight. Ms. Dean?
As far as the agreement, is there, what was the term, the length of term for the agreement? Was it a year? Or,
Do we see a
Yeah,
link?
yes, well, it's
Because
gonna
I'm
go
looking
on, I'm sorry,
on page 9, this ASP agreement period and termination policy,
See it?
is that,
Because this one implies, what, 36 months? Is that what you're saying?
need my tabs.
It is. It's truly page 9.
Okay.
8, it starts complete agreement.
Term, yeah, 36 months from the date of this agreement.
So this is a 3-year contract. Does that change anybody's mind?
Well, hold on, we're gonna look at the.
Say,
I mean, I think we just talked about wanting a higher functionality so that, you know, reporting and reconciling can be, we can improve our billing and our practices and processes. So, I mean, is this going to be the vendor that fits the possibility of, with the new finance director, the presentation of new software so that we can kind of get lean? Does the finance director, has she had a chance to take a look at it, or, you know?
She's only been here a
review any
couple days.
reports?
I
I know it's-
think she's in pretty deep, just trying to work on a budget right now. But I don't know that she's been asked that question.
Yeah, I
just
can
to be
only
honest.
imagine.
But a 3-year contract might be longer than what we choose, right? I could live with a 1-year contract, but I don't know about a 3-year.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't, yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
If you look at on page 8, there's a complete agreement, and it's talking about no amendment, modification. Is
You
that
had something.
also
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
applying to that?
Angela has something to say about it.
Actually, the finance officer is standing right here.
I was gonna say,
Okay.
as a government, we're not bound to a 3-year contract where, I mean, based on appropriations. Our contracts are usually just gonna be for 12 months with any contract. And then they'll end, and usually you wanna put that, you can add that language to the contract, Because like, again, as a government, we're not bound to a 3-year contract.
Well, and furthermore, as we discussed earlier and have discussed here tonight, we would probably, want to approve it, with the stipulation that it only lasts as our agreement with QS1. Because
Correct.
to whoever just said that, I think it may have been Dorothy Dean, if we're going to terminate them as a vendor, maybe it was Renee,
That was Renee.
then we want to make sure that this gets terminated with that agreement. We don't wanna have a separate agreement with ASP, right?
Right.
For 36 months, if we're only gonna keep QS1 6 more months,
Correct.
then we don't, and it clearly says right here that if we terminate it for any reason before then we would have to pay the fee. So we would wanna change that. That it runs concurrently with any agreement with QS1, and should we terminate with QS1, this also terminates. And if you approve it like that, then if we go back and they refuse to do it, then we'll just,
Exactly.
this won't be our service.
That, and then also, if you don't appropriate money, budget for it, in the budget to pay for it,
And-
it ends. That's just government.
And while I appreciate, we wanted to get this done quickly, I'm gonna recommend tabling it to the next meeting.
All right. So, we're gonna table this until we get an answer as to how to word, to see whether they'll accept, a wording change on that, termination agreement period, to basically allow it to terminate as their contract for the finance software terminates, or at least a certain number of months.
Or, to her point, we're not bound beyond a year, we know that, sometimes it's written in there, but to save ourselves the conversation later, just put it in the language.
Perfect. Any issues with that? Ms. Tran?
No problem tabling it.
Okay. Oh, good. All right, we'll table it. It appears to be the debate. Now, remember, that's also going to be item number 7, so that'll be taken off the agenda, or we'll just leave it on the agenda, but we'll just table it right there. All right, Georgia Power proposal. This is gonna relate to the lighting at the I-75 interchange and some of the light bulbs and different things like that. That required some maintenance and some changes. Go ahead, sir.
So, as many of you know, when the mayor came on board in January, that one of his charges was to get Morrow back in under lights. And he and I did a ride around. We saw that there were just unbelievable numbers of lights that were out. We've been in conversation with Georgia Power. They've been out multiple times, which is a service they don't typically provide when you're not in a maintenance agreement. But we sort of talked to them about the extent of the problem, and obviously they don't want us to be an unhappy customer. So part of that was the assessment of the lighting at the interstate, the exchange, which we call it the high mast lighting, which are the really tall silver poles that have many, many bulbs in them. And they did an assessment, and if there are 248 bulbs out there, 144 of them don't work. So this proposal would be so that all of the light bulbs are operational. Now, the exception is, and you see on the back page of the proposal, there have been 2 light poles that have been hit by cars over the past few years. One is damaged beyond work and needs to be replaced. We are pursuing that in an insurance claim, trying to get that solved. That's number 26, pole number 26. Pole number 27 has suffered some damage, but it may only be aesthetic damage, and that will be something when they go to change the bulbs, they'll be able to figure that out. So I just want to say that this $48,000 gets all of the current lights operational except pole 26 and maybe pole 27, the mechanism that comes up and down, not the bulbs itself. So,
And then, in addition to that, the payment for it is gonna come out of the hotel motel tax fund, because obviously that interchange and the lighting of that interchange makes it safer, makes it feel more inviting for someone to come here. And additionally to that, the very last page, you see where Sylvia had asked legal counsel for a legal opinion as to if those funds could be used, and it's right there in writing that it is a lawful expense, so this would not come out of your general fund. So, for how sometimes that money gets spent, that's a pretty good way to pay for it. questions on that item? Ms. Knight?
Okay.
I'm clear, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Dean?
I do have a question regarding, at one time, we didn't have, any vandalism from, wire theft out of those
Yes.
boxes there
Yes.
on the interstate?
Yes, if you remember, as you obviously remember, several years ago, we had a lot of theft of the copper wiring. And we
Right.
actually worked with Georgia Power, we and several other cities who were having the same problem, to place the boxes differently and to weld them shut. Because the cost to replace the copper was far more expensive than the cost to unweld the box once a year when they needed the maintenance. So that's how we solved
Okay.
it. If, yeah.
Sweet.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Tran, comments?
No comment.
Well, you good?
Curious about those light bulbs, are those LED or those are the most
Yes.
updated technology that we can
Yes,
use?
sir.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, you know, and I've had, like I said, me and Georgia Power, we're getting close. But some of the halogen lighting that is currently in use, at some point in the near future will not even be available. Once the inventory is used, they aren't gonna manufacture it anymore. So that's just something we need to consider over the next, couple of years. So if we have bulbs that are no longer produced, once they go out, obviously you can't just change the bulb anymore. But the high mass lighting are LED. And I'm sure by the next couple of years, LED won't be the newest technology, so.
Oh, looks good. All right. I've got 7:15. Let's go over the regular session agenda, give everybody a chance to take a slight little break. And then, remember, we'll have at least one interview at 8 o'clock for the Public Works Director position, I believe Mr. Moody. And then we'll continue with the agenda items as necessary. So, going over the regular agenda, everybody's had a chance to do it. So we know that we're gonna have a consent agenda with corrections on the first part. The regular session meeting agenda, so we've got Jerry Patrick, we've talked about that. Under your regular ordinances, item number 4, and let's stick with A and B to start with. A and B basically is the same thing we've been talking about for 6-8 weeks, and that is to codify, what we're really doing. One is deleting an ordinance in its entirety about putting the sanitation bill on the tax bill. And then the other one is changing it so that you're not billed on an annual basis, it goes back to a quarterly service, which is basically what we're providing. And we do think there's enough meat in there in terms of some additional verbiage where the city should be able to go out there and pick on people, or not pick on people, let's just say enforce for those people who are taking advantage of the city and dumping, more than their fair share at somebody's house.
And Mayor, if I may, so to clarify, one ordinance changes the billing. One removes the requirement for a single-family house to have sanitation.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, so they aren't both necessarily billing. One is to take out the requirement that every single-family detached home was required to have service. That's no longer a part of the ordinance. So that's what we're removing.
And then,
Brett,
and this one would then finalize that.
04,
I'm sorry, Ms. Dean?
that's 2020-04, the one that's taking out repealing.
Well, yeah, 24 is the one where it's charged annually, and I believe that's also where it's, maybe that's not.
So
what's on the sanitation.
2020-03 removes the requirement for residential properties to have sanitation. 2020-04 changes it back to quarterly billing from one annual bill on the tax bill. And if you notice in the item description, sanitation ordinance 2020-03 to amend the collection of residential refuse, that's removing the requirement to have it. 2020-04 to ratify the change in sanitation billing, because we have already gone back to quarterly, this is just ratifying it.
I know that may not be everybody's cup of tea, but are we good? Councilman Knight?
You asked the question?
Oh, no, I just wanted to make sure we all understood it. I realize we might not have unanimous consent here.
No, I understand it.
Okay. Ms. Dean?
I'm good.
Ms. Tran?
I'm good too.
Okay, quiet, good?
Okay.
Okay. And then, picking up, what are we gonna call it here? That same item, which is now gonna be Resolution C, and that's, approving the continuity of government plan. And this really is, you know, kind of the method that the rank and file will use if something bad happens to be able to reach particular individuals in this city to be able to make things work. So I'll have the city manager kind of explain.
Yes, and we discussed this a little bit during the last council meeting, and it was confusing because we had a lot of things coming out from the governor's office at the same time. So this was the resolution that was, the model was drafted by the county, and they pushed it out to all the cities because, as you can imagine, as a small city, some of our continuity will depend and rely on the county at large. So we used their model. In the coming weeks, we will look at some appendix that are specific to Morrow, but we wanted to go ahead and get this continuity of government in place should something happen that we need to rely on, you know, the county's model. So it's really, as Mayor Lemple said, okay, if I get struck by lightning, who's taking my place? If the computers go down, where do we replace them? If this building gets torn down, where do we set up shop somewhere else? So it's all that kind of stuff for any emergency, not just one that is medical in nature.
Yeah, and as you've read it, I mean, it deals with police department, fire department, obviously administrative sections for what it is. Any questions? Ms. Dean?
Only that, do we have a better way of organizing this so that, we can have this, readily available? I'm seeing, from the chart, you know, for instance, for the, fire department, you have Splints and then Fleming and that, but do we have something that's better organized, and do we have a book?
Well, remember, they have their own flow chart within the actual city itself. In this case, we're basically saying, you know, who's the leader, and then in the event that person's not available, who's next. But they would still use their own, you know, internal charts. This is only the intergovernmental parts.
That part I understand, but I'm looking at the pages that after the agreement here for each department.
Yeah, so I think this may answer your question. This spreadsheet is not designed to be printed out. So we could, you know, do some reformatting to create a more fluid read, if you will, if you have the book. So if you clicked on the link to open it up, it'd be a spreadsheet with all these tabs across the bottom. You know, we just printed it out for your packet. But, you know, it's not an impossible thing to do to translate that into something that printed out better, which is probably really all you're asking. Is that right? Can you hear me, Councilwoman Dean?
So for the, Form D, for orders of succession, I guess this is for, Finance Department. We have Angela, Chris Pike, and then Han.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, now, Form D talks about City Hall.
Right, that's what I'm speaking, yeah, I'm looking at for the city.
Okay, and then Form E has some delegation down to the finance officer. And so there's a form for every, you know, division, if you will,
department,
yeah.
that
So,
position, yeah, okay.
yeah. So, again, I feel like what you're asking for is basically to adjust the formatting so it reads better in a book rather than the way I just printed out the spreadsheets for the packet.
Cause it's so tiny.
Well, you gotta remember, these guys are gonna store this online and they're gonna be reading it collectively, but I understand. I know how you like small print.
But it's so tiny.
Yeah. I heard you.
We got it.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Knight, questions?
None at this time.
Ms. Tran?
No question.
Okay. Mr. Clark?
No, sir.
So, let's see what else we got here.
So then, Mayor, you just would need to remember that the approval for the proposal would need to include your execution of that proposal.
On that one?
On item 8, for example.
Say that again. I
On
don't see.
item 8, on the regular agenda.
Oh.
The approvals of the ordinances and resolutions
Okay.
automatically come with your signature,
Right,
but when
right,
you're.
right,
Yeah,
got it. So item 8 is and execution.
And as well as, so it's 5, we're tabling 6.
What about C? You know, where you talked about that continuity in government, no, that doesn't require it, right? Because that's just. the
No, that's
approval
right,
of it.
because your approval automatically comes with signature.
And
So it'd just
5.
be 5 and 8. So I'm just explaining to the mayor, reminding him rather, he certainly knows that if the motion does not include the language that he is authorized to execute, then we'd have to come back for approval just to get him to sign the very document that you just approved. So when we make motions, we would want to consider the approval of the document as well as the approval of him to execute the document.
And one without the other doesn't help you much.
Yes.
All right. That's pretty much the agenda. That's going to give us about 8 minutes before the regular session. You know, if you guys want to, you know, get yourself a cup of coffee, we'll be ready for the regular council meeting at 7:30, and that's about 7 minutes from now.
So you would pause. Pause. So you want
We
to.
take these in a couple different orders. There's just a couple different sections on there. So, matter of fact, let's grab number 9 because that's something that was important. And number 9 is Aerotropolis. It appears that in the past, over there at the Porsche section over in Hapeville, I guess the city was involved in some CID or something along those lines. Can we get an update on that?
Yeah, so, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but the Aerotropolis, and of course, Councilwoman Dean and Councilwoman Knight will have the virtue of more information because they were on the council. But it's a collaborative that was put together to help with economic development and sort of a comprehensive marketing, if you will, for the area that is around the airport that is known as the Aerotropolis. Now, Mayor Lample, you may recall Eldrin Bell, when he was chairman years and years ago, started the conversation of we should have in a city that has the world's busiest passenger airport, there should be more city around the airport, okay? It's like there's no experience to be had when you come to the airport, not enough. So it's been a conversation that's been in the making for as long as I've been here, and that's 18 years. So finally it came to fruition about 3 years ago that there was this organization called the Aerotropolis. So it includes Clayton County and Fulton County, the South Fulton County cities. But our arm is, the Clayton County side, so we won't always be involved in the Fulton County stuff. But again, it was economic development, opening opportunities up for the city to possibly be seen by more developers than they would if Aerotropolis wasn't in play. I was very much a proponent for the Aerotropolis, and this is our second year. This past year was our second year. And I've had different conversations with different people about it, the current council members included, and I just personally cannot advocate any longer for paying into the Aerotropolis, because I couldn't articulate, if you asked me, which will come up during the budget, what has it yielded for us? And
And
Councilwoman.
it's an annual fee of $5,000, just.
Now, I mean, it's been a different amount in the past, we've paid more in the past, but last year we paid 5,000. Cities have, not every city in Clayton County is involved, Lake City, I think, and Jonesboro have newly arrived to participate, but, and Councilwoman Knight and Dean, you all may have different conversation to include. I just wanna say that it's not something I advocate anymore, and I would like us to consider not paying into the Aerotropolis.
Because it's gonna be relatively new to at least the two new members, if the, Ms. Dean or Ms. Knight, wants to kinda start and tell us either the whys or the why nots, we're open to that.
Please.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, as city manager stated, from the inception of the Aerotropolis, it was supposed to be, a good thing for Clayton County. Is what we all, perceived it to be. But going forward, other cities in the county did prosper, but the city of Morrow didn't. I don't think. And I don't see any potential coming out of being a member going forward.
Okay. Ms. Knight?
And
I'm sorry,
I'll
go
leave it at that.
All right. Ms. Knight?
Yeah, I think our experience has been, we wanted to be a vibrant and dynamic partner with the Aerotropolis partnership. But again, participation level, the value add is difficult to quantify. It becomes a little bit of, well, if you're not a member, what are you missing? If you are a member, what did you get? So I'm really kind of, I do agree with the opinions of the city manager and the and Councilwoman Dean. You would hope it would be a value add relationship, but you can only rest on the track record that's been provided.
Yeah, and if I may, I would like to say, it may still be a good thing for the county, because their level of involvement and participation may be different from ours. Just as a city, I think we're gonna benefit the same, whether we're in it or not specifically. We'll get some trickle-down benefit from the county, right? Because it's their development authority, and in effect, Morrow becomes a part of that too. So that's just, I think it's almost like redundant for them to be in it and for us to be in it, because we haven't seen any specifically measurable benefits for Morrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no comment.
Okay. Ms. Tran, any comments?
I will that have more information than just,
Yeah.
yes, that's all, no comment.
Well, and then this one, it's like an initial discussion. I'm familiar, with the area. Certainly the Porsche facility and the different things that they did over there are phenomenal. They really are. When I first took the chair as mayor, they started sending me emails. Basically PowerPoint presentations and different things like that. And you can always make the argument. It's nice to see. You're as a mayor, you're invited to attend. But anybody who knows me realizes that, let's make it productive. If we're all just having a meeting to meet and we're not accomplishing an objective, then it's not necessarily a good use of your time. In other words, we're doing a good job of kind of showcasing maybe politicians. I'm not so sure that we're doing a fantastic job of actually accomplishing results.
And I'm not sure, the Porsche may have come may predate
Right, that
the actual,
section, I agree.
the current iteration of Aerotropolis. They have come on as a partner,
Correct.
but, you know, we couldn't credit Aerotropolis with Porsche.
I would agree,
Yeah.
because that would have been the same gentleman that put together, Atlantic Station is the guy who really made that deal happen. But I believe they've got, you know, a game plan. But, you know, I would have made the same statement, you know, 3 months ago, but especially now, you know, when we have a scenario where, you know, we've got an economy that's completely upside down. We want to be able to take our economic development dollars and apply them to a live body here, so that we see every day what it is they're supposed to be doing, what results we can get. And 5,000 or a little more than that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but we're not gonna find it in big buckets, we're gonna find it in small buckets. And you take the small buckets and you say, you know, how well did you do with your money? And if we can't make a reasonable argument that we got a reasonable return, then we've got to be able to say, you know, for today, the answer should be we'll pass. And I'd feel much better looking at a warm body, and wondering what they're doing every day, knowing that they're gonna get at least 40 hours worth a week out. If they're any good at all, we'll get something. So, in this particular case, the question was whether we would continue that relationship and funding, and obviously from just the notes on the council, including the recommendation from the city manager, is the answer would be no. Okay, and we don't have to be mean about it, it's just, you know, a very polite no. So then working in kind of reverse, Jester's Creek Phase 3 construction update.
So as I mentioned in the conversation earlier, I finished the packet today that has to go to GDOT for approval about the whole bid process. I see, this evening I've gotten a response from GDOT, some questions that they have, but, Moreland Altabelli, who, well, they used to be Moreland, now they're Atlas, but, you know, if we can get GDOT approval of the bid packet, then we could feasibly be in construction by the end of June, depending on how the corona state of emergency affects things. Now, we see that the governor acknowledges that this type of work is essential. So, but if we get deeper into the pandemic and the rules change, we may not be able to have a construction crew out there. But notwithstanding that, we would see this go under construction, you know, at the end of June.
Perfect.
And that, so for those who aren't aware, maybe I can get you all some images. This will pick up at the Rock Park on Hammock. It starts there and will travel along Jester's Creek toward I-75.
But it doesn't cross, right? It just
No, it
gets
doesn't
you.
cross.
Does it get you down to Woodstone?
Oh,
Somewhere
yeah,
in there?
through past Woodstone and,
Okay.
and over to, it really comes up onto the property that we own.
Right.
That's the logical
But we're
turnaround.
not crossing the creek back.
I do think we crossed the creek.
Oh, we do with this one? So if we cross it,
Yeah.
then even if we don't
Yeah.
finish it, they've got a way from Skylark to get all the way down.
We, in fact, one of the
And
big
Brookview
delays
for
in
that
this,
matter.
because the interesting thing to note is that Mayor Lample was the city manager when we won this grant. That's how long it's been in the pipeline. Because the floodway and the floodplain changed about 4 years ago, and that really did a toll on the design. And part of that was the compromise of the load bearing of the path. It would not be able to hold a vehicle anymore to cross the creek. So you wouldn't be able to drive a truck across the creek.
But the wooden sections did that as well years ago behind the Masonic Lodge. You
Yeah.
really wouldn't want to drive a truck.
Well, yeah, because the curve especially, but, so anyway, it's just, for me as your former grants administrator, I just can't believe we're finally on the eve of building the path system again, so.
Well, and seeing real progress out there, I don't believe the governor's gonna get in the way. Construction's been going on, they're not shutting down construction. The construction, you know, you can stand 6 feet away from somebody else. There's ways to make this work, so I don't see that's gonna be a problem. But, either way, that'll look good, especially for those who like that trail system and things like that. And any further discussions on that subject?
No, sir.
This is Dorothy. I have a question, with, Whitley, Engineering. I'm seeing that the total, is saying there's a construction cost of $927,000.
Yeah, that was the contract you already approved from Triscapes. Triscapes will build it,
Uh-huh.
and Mark Whitley will oversee their building, cause they don't typically
Okay.
have engineers out there making sure that the plans are being followed. So we need an engineer presence to go out there and say, yep, looks like y'all are building it according to the design.
And these are SPOS funds anyway.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so remember,
And-
these are your SPOS projects and the money has to be allocated for that.
Yeah.
So just sitting on a SPOS funds, especially when we could put people to work, why would we wanna do that?
So did we get that situation with those, what do they call them, pylons or whatever, that was in their phase 2, all situated about how they're supposed to be put into the ground and all of that, with that
Well,
type
so.
of, soil?
So the pylons were really about the boardwalk that went over the wetlands, and we don't have
Uh-huh.
that in phase 3, you know, cause we modified it,
Uh-huh.
so the phase 2, the pylon issue was resolved because they rebuilt the boardwalk. Now, and
Okay.
so hear what I'm saying, and anybody who's in the room 5 years from now, the first spot of rot on the path system was literally at the 5-year mark. I was literally walking on the path, took a photo and showed it, and I was like, this looks like it shouldn't be rotting. Within the next year, the whole thing was rotting like out from under our feet. So we aren't going to know if the wood solved the problem for 5 years. I mean, that's just, because we had, if you remember, there was lots of conversation with council, they wanted to redesign it, do something different, and that, the GDP said no. If we're only going to build it according to the design. If you wanna redesign it, we
Okay.
have to go to litigation.
But then, wasn't there something, an issue with the wood that they used? It was not
Right.
the correct wood.
They used residential grade wood instead of commercial grade wood, because when they were building it,
Right.
there was no engineer out there checking to make sure they were using
Okay.
the right wood. And that's what we
Okay.
have to hire this time.
Making sure, okay.
Making sure, yeah, yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Dorothy, or not Dorothy, Renee?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Tran, you good?
No question.
Okay. Item number 7, COVID-19 update discussion.
This is just in general, if you wanted to let the council know about, you know, what's going on,
Well-
information, I mean.
Well, we're making good progress. You know, there's lots of meetings to hear yourself think, on the state level, on the Georgia Municipal Association level, on the county level. And not all of that is good, you know. But some of them are experts, and then behind the scenes, you get people asking a series of questions. Unfortunately, some of those feel like, you know, when you're doing it on a state of Georgia basis, they're much further behind than we are, right? So it's like they just started to do what we did 3 months ago, 2 months ago. And then others are looking at what's coming next, kind of bleeding edge. And that is where they realize a series of tests is gonna be required. You're gonna have to have 2 types of tests. You know, you have to have the test where they do the swab, and that tells you whether you're contagious or not. And then you have to have the second test, which would be an antibodies test, which is a blood test, for you to be able to determine whether you had antibodies to it or not. So it's a 2-part scenario, and you're gonna see a tremendous amount of information about that coming out very soon. The hard part is that both the federal government and the state government seem to be in line first, which means no matter how hard we try to solve a problem, we're not, it's almost like we can't solve it on our own, but we're working on that. So we are in the process of having some blood test abilities if we can get them delivered here. In other words, we've asked for them, and that would be enough for your first responders, so that we could hopefully send pretty much all of our staff that's in a paramedic role or police department role. The old test used to take 3 days. The Abbott test that you've heard about takes 15 minutes. And we have reason to believe that one of these days we're gonna be able to send all of our people to get that Abbott test. And then hopefully we'll have the other blood test here. And that's a tool. Remember, there's no vaccine. This is gonna go on for a while. You know, so when you look at how the operation of the city goes, or how the operation of each one of these first responders go, this social distancing that you're seeing right now, you know, may become the new norm for the next year. It could easily be that way. And you could end up with spot scenarios where, you know, like an Albany scenario where suddenly 10, 15, 20 people get sick, and they get very concerned about that. So, you know, we're making progress. We are aware, you know, that at least one person in the city, you know, was listed as infected or contagious, however you want to say. We were never able to confirm that they actually, you know, weren't in the hospital versus here. And the time period that we've known that has now exceeded the time period for most people to have gotten well. You know, so he's a statistic, and that's where we get into discussions about how can we help, which is the next level, right? Where we're sitting out there trying to be proactive, not only for the individual and his family and looking out for them, but our community. You know, what's good for them? How can we adjust that? And our first responders, how do we make it so we don't put them in a dangerous situation? So there seems to be some good discussion from communications 911 as to, you know, what we send out from an ambulance standpoint or something like that. It's not perfect. I don't want to say that it is, so it makes you nervous. But then let's go one step further and to sit there and say, you know, wouldn't you really like to know? Well, that is a really good discussion that's happening on a national level, and federal law, basically as your medical rights, will prevent us from actually knowing that. So then you have to ask yourself as a council person, your job is to protect health, welfare, and safety of the public. But the law, the rules, are not going to allow you to be able to do that. Then as we try to figure out how to do that, more rules get in the way that prevent you from actually administering that. You know, you can hear some stuff happening on the news where it appears like some people are actually doing it. Well, we ask legal counsel how, you know, just making sure that we're correct. How would we do it? Or this would be an idea we would have, and we were kind of told that's not going to be possible. And then we took that opinion to Georgia Municipal Association's attorney and said, well, I appreciate our legal advice, but we'd like to expand on that a little bit, only for them to actually say the exact same thing. And then since then, that same discussion was on one of the conference calls with the governor's office, and they realized they have the same problem as well. You know, so eventually we're the ones who are going to take a significant amount of heat if something crazy happens out there in your subdivision. But I assure you, at this point, there doesn't appear to be a legal method for us to solve it, barring somebody reducing some of your constitutional rights, which is a really big deal, right? You have a right to remain anonymous. You have a right not to have people know. But what if you wander out to your mailbox and get all your neighbors sick? And we know that people are doing that, you know. So it's not a perfect science. We're working on it. The state of Georgia is, well, this is bigger than the state of Georgia. This is the national folks are working on it. And we don't have any easy answers.
Global.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. I said more like global.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you got the global pandemic, but you know, if you're in a,
Our laws are.
yeah, if you're in a communist country, they don't really care what you think. You know, they just kind of take you away. But here, you get treated a little bit differently, and we want that. We respect that. But we would like to be able to help the person. Let's just not even be draconian. Let's assume any one of us, right? Let's say that we're at home, we're sick, and when you're sick with this virus, you don't have a lot of energy. You can't really get out of bed. You have a potential that you're going to not be able to breathe, and it feels like you're drowning. You have a potential that you will die. What if you don't have access to friends and family plan, right? Where somebody's going to help you out? then the theory is, if I know who you are, I ought to be able to reach out to you and help you out. I'm telling you, legal is telling you that you don't.
Not
So-
only that you don't, that you can't.
Yeah, similar. But I hate being told I can't, because that means it's impossible, and I don't believe impossible. I believe that where there's a need for a citizen who needs your help, you know, we will find a way. But I would certainly like to know the path before we have the problem, you know, and that's just fair, right? We know that eventually a number of our citizens are going to get sick. It's a global issue. This is not going away. We know eventually we're going to run into folks who cannot help themselves. And we have got to find a path as a country to offer them the assistance they need, if for no other reason, you know, not even looking at it as a compassionate discussion, is to make sure we can protect the rest of us. Yeah. So, and that is our job. But I'm just saying it's a little tough out there. Lots of rules getting in the way of each other for, you know, a virus that has a whole new set of rules. But I will say, in the 3 months or 2 months that this has been, you know, dealt with, both on a national or state level, even the city itself, we have made remarkable progress, right? And we've been, that progress has allowed us and bought us time. The decisions you've made have bought you time. And to some degree, we've gotten enormously lucky, you know. We know, and I think I can say this without upsetting anybody, we know that there's a section of zip code Morrow. Can I say that?
Let me say it
Okay.
for you. So the county will report a larger number, maybe even as many as 24 Morrow cases, but we know the city limits has only one. And we see within that larger zip code that there are even some clusters, but those aren't the problems that we're going to be able to solve, obviously. I just want everybody to have a comfort level of, in Morrow, there's still only one case. In the larger, what they call the greater Morrow area, which to the mayor's point is the zip code, but it's outside the city limits.
But can you tell me the street?
Mhm.
See, that's what I'm telling you about. You guys would be very interested in knowing what the street
Yeah,
is.
it's a street right outside the city limits that.
Not like right outside, not like right next door, but let's just say within a rock's throw.
Yeah, you know, we're a cluster of maybe 10 homes, you know, and that's a big number, especially for a small city like us when we're only looking at one case. So, you know, and that's the frustration, obviously, that we all experience is, and what the GMA attorney specifically said was, in the laws that are related to gratuities, if you will, you can only offer something that you offer to everyone. You cannot specify a citizen and help them in any way. Of course, you know, as you're talking, I'm having some ideas, so we'll talk about that later. But, so that, it binds us. I mean, how, as a council, you know somebody that needs help, you know even how to get them some help, but you can't. That's really what we're looking at.
So it's very, very, very frustrating. But yet, we all know that a certain nursing home in Georgia has 6 people in it that are sick. We know the name of the nursing home. It's on the front page of the news. Yeah. But yet we can't tell you a local street, you know, that has a cluster of folks on it, even without telling you what house they live in, because the street's fairly large. You'd never be able to guess it on your own. And then on this skin test or this blood test, some other things you learn as you go through this is, you know, we have paramedics. You know, that's like one step below an RN. You know, they can put IVs in your arm, they can hook you up with all kinds of EKGs, they can tell you what dimension your heart is. But to actually order this skin blood test, we have to have a phlebotomist, you know, spell that. That'll take you a second, you know, and that's a person who does blood work. And you're going, that person by far has less skills than your paramedic, by far, okay? But that is the person who has to do that test.
Because by law, your paramedic can only measure glucose from a blood test. So if you're measuring any other thing, it has to be a certified phlebotomist.
So to be able to conduct a antibody test for your employees, we will engage a phlebotomist and hire them to be able to prick your finger. So I know y'all appreciate all that.
And again, even just finding a phlebotomist who's available, when every healthcare worker is sucked up by the system, you know, it's just, you know, every little thing is a mountain to climb. So, and I really appreciate Mayor Lample's dedication to this. He's been tireless, to say the least.
Well, and we're using, you know, some private sector networks, LinkedIn, to be honest with you, to be able to reach out to the people from Abbott and a couple of others, because the traditional supply chains don't work. Yeah, you can talk all you want to, you just can't get the material. Matter of fact, they're literally pirating the material from us that we ordered, and it shows that we ordered it in more than a reasonable period of time. But when it doesn't show up, it was commandeered from me, which means, you know, it'd been nice if we'd have got the memo. But all that being said, you know, it's a terrible disease. Our seniors really, really have to pay attention long-term to how they're gonna do business. You know, the city has done a good job of separating people. Some people work from home. And I think it's something that we can do long-term. So when we talk about being able to do online sanitation payments or whatever, the idea isn't, you know, first, it's a great idea long-term, right, irrespective of what happens. But, you know, all of this is gonna be like a new normal, and we just have to figure out how to adjust to it. I don't think you have to be quarantined for 14 days anymore.
No, you don't.
So I think now it's a combination of the tests, right?
It's symptoms, test, doctors, referral, all that. But yeah, the CDC no longer requires a 14-day quarantine.
And now, think about it. Remember, some of these fire departments were catching it early, and the whole shifts were being sent home. 28 people shutting down, you know, entire firehouses and different things like that. So, again, in a couple of months, you know, the whole system is catching up, and will get, you know, remarkably better over time. But sooner or later, when people get it right, you still have, you know, a global pandemic that is going to come back through some of these countries that are just now where we were 4 months ago, and they're going to, you know, they're going to push that virus back to us, and in the fall, and we'll all think it's flu
I don't know if
season.
you heard the CDC's announcement that they suggest all concerts be delayed to the fall of 2021.
Did you hear that? All concerts until 2021. Or you can ask yourself the next time you want to go to a Falcons game, how long before you want to sit next to somebody screaming for the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah.
Well, for me, New Orleans Saints, the answer would be never. But for the Falcons, you know, that would be something there. But anyway, any specific questions that somebody may have related to, you know, anything?
So I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Dorothy. You know, they're talking about people who are asymptomatic, that's not showing the, you know, the symptoms, but they do test positive. So, those people, to me, are the ones that, they're not talking about anything, you know, what, other than taking the blood test to be able to see if they have the antibodies.
Yeah, well, even the blood test, there's a chart that we have. I don't know, have you given them that chart, the one that was on the blood test? One of the concerns on the blood test was it allows you to show the antibodies, and there's two types, right? I think there's a G and an H. Don't hold me to that, but there are two types. But if you went to the Walmart yesterday and licked the handle on the wall, you could be a carrier of the virus for 7 days, and that will not show up on that blood test. It would show up on the saliva test. On the saliva test, once you stop being infected, it doesn't tell you anything else. It doesn't tell you whether you had it. It just tells you you're not infectious now. But you're right. So somebody could walk in here tonight, pass our thermometer test, not have a fever, not be sniffling all over the place, and we could be getting a number of people sick today.
Hence the social distancing.
And that's, we're supposed to stay. And somebody told me now that if you're jogging, it's like 22 feet versus 7. Well, you're never going to see me jogging, so don't worry about me. But for everybody else who jogs, just remember, jog in front of them, I think is what they're recommending. Because behind is 22 feet. So, you know, we'll learn a lot more about this as it goes on, but yes. And
Right.
for you know, I realize, Dorothy, you're just a little older than me, but it just comes down to that makes you nervous. There's no easy answers here. And, you know, nobody wants to get into the statistics of what happens when you're a certain age and you catch this virus, but the percentages are awful. You know, I mean, they're still, you got a chance to recover, but, you know, if you get really sick, you know, there doesn't appear to be help on the way.
We did hear some encouraging news, I thought, from the governor's conference call. He wasn't on it, but some of his experts were, that we have more hospital beds available, vacant in the state than some of the other states. So we're not to capacity. We have, I think, as many as 1,400 hospital beds that are currently empty across the state. So I thought that was encouraging, because I know a lot of the news we've heard is that everybody's at capacity. And they do say that the new date for the peak expectation is May 1.
And when you're listening to these, like I said, these conference calls go on about an hour. You're gonna get about 2 minutes worth of good data, depending on what you have. But one piece of data that really came out today that was really good was they started listing specifically how many emergency room beds do we have, how many ventilators do we have available, and not just how many are out there, how many do you have if somebody got sick today. And you certainly looked like you had capacity. Now, you could use that capacity if everybody went out there and shook everybody's hand, but if we continue to do the social distancing and the norm comes out, you know, I think you can be, you know, in pretty good shape. But still, that's just saying.
Of course, I have another question, like for our fire and police, you know, the equipment that they're using, how are they sterilizing or disinfecting, you know, things? I don't know if they're using face shields or anything like that.
Depending on the situation, the PPEs, there's a lot there. But remember, early on, we talked about buying some additional equipment. We didn't get everything we wanted, but we got some stuff that worked. So it's a combination of fogging or spraying or.
Yeah, so we bought some foggers, because one of our big concerns was being able to sterilize the cars, the ambulances, the fire trucks, the rooms that they sleep in, the courtroom when we were still convening court. But to the mayor's point earlier, FEMA did commandeer those before they got into the shipping cycle, so we lost the foggers. But then, you know, as resourceful as firefighters can be, they found that certain painting applications that are aerosol can distribute the solution as effectively as the fogger. So we went ahead and bought two of the paint things, knowing our solution was still on the way. In fact, today, they were testing it to make sure it worked. So, like if a patrol car is carrying a person that has symptoms, they come back, we spray out the interior, and it takes 2 minutes to dry, and then it's 99.8% sterilized.
That's good stuff.
And that is, I know it sounds crazy, a paint application with some fogger solution, but for the time, that's pretty cutting edge, because nobody else is doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except the people that FEMA.
Well, you know, which is a good thing that, you know, somebody came up with that, because, you know, we're gonna find that we're gonna have to really be resourceful as we hit that curve, you know.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's not there yet, so I'm just hoping that we can, you know, sustain the protection for them.
Yeah, I mean, we are very conscientious on their behalf. I mean, even, and I say that, if you remember when Councilwoman Tran and Mayor Lample asked some weeks ago for the first time, at that moment, when we sort of embraced hey, this is something we need to be preparing for, we really did hit the ground running in terms of sanitizing. And I know it seems simple, hand sanitizer, Clorox wipes, you try to find it now. We got basically everything available that was on the shelves in Morrow, because we were a few days ahead of everybody else. So we're still in good shape, and we've made some good relationships with Costco and Walmart. Walmart will actually allow our public safety to go in before they open and buy what they need for the department. Costco puts some things aside. So we appreciate those partnerships, because that keeps us in a good position with all of our PPE stuff. protective gear.
The state of Georgia is now, almost up to speed because they're taking, the chart, the link that they had where we were sending in what our needs for PPE were. So they're taking direct orders from cities,
Yeah.
basically saying, what are your needs in the future? And, because it's gonna go on for a while, we're gonna use materials, and right now, we got what was available on the shelf, but let's say that supply chain's behind.
Yeah.
So the next time we're not gonna be able to get, things off the shelf, so.
But for
but
PPE,
helpful.
the orders from the state don't include hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes. It's all the gloves, masks, and coveralls.
Yeah, so that's all good stuff.
Costco has some hand sanitizer available in the last few days.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, so we probably have gotten some, I just haven't been told, because we get a steady, like, somebody gets the text, it's here, and we go over and get a couple of cases,
Yeah.
just to be ahead of, and of course, the more we minimize people coming into the building, the less we need it, so our use will go down, but still it's here, and
And for those who didn't get a chance to see the fire chief, he made a little video out of the back of the ambulance, just talking about, COVID-19 and, the resources available to the city. It's a good watch,
Yeah.
So,
we had one from the police chief and the fire chief.
so if the fire chief would learn how to play the drums, his hit numbers would go up a lot.
Yeah.
He's got that look that
Okay.
maybe not, so, All right, so, number 6, social media. We know that we've opened up the section for the DMO and the SOQ for, social media. Yeah, the one that is an immediate need is we have got to, get the process, the ball moving on the DMO. No question. The other one, if, as it comes available, so be it. We'll take whoever, is out there, and we'll pick the best of what we got. But the DMO has got to be, something we're working on. So hopefully between now and the next meeting, we've at least got one person we think is capable of basically filling out the documentation necessary. Whether we pick up any additional portion of that, that's on us later. But we need that EIN number and the ability to have the 501c6. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
It'll save us a lot of problems later, I promise. Number 5, medical insurance. We've just really started looking at different things. This is the city's medical insurance policy. We just have it. We realize it's gonna be part of a budget negotiation, but that's a budget number. But I'm gonna let the city manager talk about
Yeah,
what we-
so, and while I appreciate that the information has just been made available to, in a way that I can pass to the mayor and council, I encourage us all to remember that we have insurance brokers who work on our behalf, and they have been working on this for weeks. Part of that is to go out to insurance providers and find out, okay, they share our census data, how many employees we have, and a big part of what they look at is what medications are our employees taking, some private information that maybe even we don't get to see, who's had what, who's been to the doctor for what, who's got long-term medical conditions, and that generates the interest from the provider about what they would be willing to offer us in terms of a premium. So it's kind of confusing, to your point earlier, Councilwoman Dean, it's kind of confusing to look at spreadsheets on pages. So that's why I would encourage you to look at this on your computers or come into City Hall if you don't have one and look at it on a newly sanitized desktop. Because the Kaiser that we currently have and have had as a carrier for 3 years is going up. And that's what you see on the summary, is that their increase is 13% increase, 13.63%. See, I even get confused. I want to be able to open the spreadsheet right here. And then the Anthem, which is once upon a time was Blue Cross Blue Shield, has, I'm reading this wrong. Give me a second. It's the reduction is from Anthem of 13%, which basically means we would save $100,000. That's the, and I know a lot of, some of you want to see the detail and understand it differently through the spreadsheet, and we'll have Angela call you maybe tomorrow. But the bottom line is, if we switch from Kaiser to Anthem, we'll save $100,000 in our premiums. And that's sort of the nuts and bolts of it. Now, whether or not you want to talk to the broker, they can talk to any of you. Y'all can contact them directly. You want a Q&A about all kinds of things, absolutely. But the nuts and bolts of it is, if we stay with Kaiser, we're going to see an increase in our premiums. If we go with Anthem, we're going to see a reduction of $100,000. And some years we'll see people come in and say, oh, we want your business and we'll give you a 2% reduction. Sometimes that isn't enough of a reduction to change your entire system. But when you're looking at this kind of reduction at $100,000 savings, you just can't ignore it. I can't ignore it. So we do need to make a decision by June, but as soon as we can make a decision, the better. So if you have questions that you want to type out, you want to call and talk to us about, you want to talk to our broker directly, all of that is available to you. But I encourage you to look at that now, ask the questions now, because if you wait a couple weeks and pick it up for the first time, it's going to put us farther out in making the decision. Sometimes, honestly, we will get a liability insurance or medical insurance number that comes after we've drafted the budget. So it just sometimes, with whatever's happening and all the things that move, we try to anticipate the number based on trends. But you know, obviously, you have it now. It'll be before the budget is brought to you in draft form. And I don't know if anybody's got any questions. I'll do my best to answer them. But I think the most productive thing may be to formulate your questions privately and let me know what they are, or I can give you Sean Mitchell's number and he can talk to you directly.
Yeah. Blue Cross Blue Shield is a good company, right? And it's national, so you don't have that problem. Not knowing exactly what the city offers today versus what we offered 10 years ago. There was a time period where we took a higher deductible on the employee's part to get us a better premium, and then the city refunded that back through the employees themselves.
Yeah.
I know.
We could, yes.
But the question is if I take on that deductible, in other words, we're insuring ourselves at the lower number. You know, and then depending on how well our employees, you know, most of our employees are healthy. I mean, they really are. You know, we hope, you know, but for the fields they're in, most of the time, that's true. You know, that's one additional way that in the past we have, you know, tried to capture a few dollars back. Then there's always the question, you know, is it in my network? Is it not in my network? You know, where Kaiser, you just go to Kaiser, you know, and then there's the question as to, you know, do I get a specialist? Do I have to go to a primary care physician before I go to a specialist? And then what is the copay and the deductibles, which of course those aren't on here.
Well, in the email that I sent out on those larger spreadsheets where all the tabs are at the bottom, there's a great many more detail than you have in your executive summary, which will talk about that kind of thing. And in the past years we have had, to your point, Kaiser, you didn't get to go out of network. Oftentimes that we find is when you are allowed to go out of network, it costs us more.
Correct.
Right.
And that
Yeah,
would be,
yeah.
so I don't know. But I know those will be questions that somebody might ask, and the spreadsheet is long.
Yeah.
So somewhere in
And
there.
I could maybe do a conference call between some of you and Sean, 2 at a time, so we're not doing individual conversations, you know, so, because you can't convene, obviously, 3 or more.
Well, is there a way to have a discussion? Let's just make an assumption, all right? Let's grab a company, let's grab Blue Cross Blue Shield, because it seems like they've given us the best option. Okay.
Cigna gave us a comparable, it was like a percentage difference, but the Anthem was the best.
But couldn't we put them at the end of the table and just ask them good questions about copays and different things like that? Would that not work?
Well, that's why you have an insurance broker. I'm not saying you can't talk to them directly, but typically how it would work is your questions would go to the broker would ask them, instead of you sitting in front of a Blue Cross Blue
Right,
Shield.
but if I put somebody at the end of the table, a broker's not, or the insurance guy's not gonna answer the question. He's gonna say, I don't know, I'll get back to you, which is why you're asking for the
Well,
questions that
yeah,
are.
unless we tell them before they talk to them. Like, we give them the questions and say, go find me. I'm not saying you can't, I'm just saying it's never been my experience that we've talked directly to the provider. But, I mean, I'm sure we can. What are they gonna tell us? No?
No, they'll tell us they don't know, which is the equivalent.
No, I'm talking about
of the
directly to
usual.
the provider. And by the end of
But
the table,
what's
we, of course,
your
we-
what's your opinion on the copays and different things like that? Because we could have the greatest copays in the world. It's the employee who pays the copay. He's gonna be telling us pretty quickly, yeah, you saved yourself $100,000, but you cost me a lot more money.
Well, and so, great point. So I've been here for 18 years. Have we had a situation that benefited the individual employee more than this one? Yeah, sure. But does it make sense to continue doing that, given what we're gonna face in next year's budget, obviously? The fact that, you know, insurance is a benefit. We're not required to give it to employees. We want employees to have a good experience and a good package, but I don't agree.
You realize we're on different sides of this discussion versus what we were doing a couple
I
weeks ago.
don't agree that we should pay everything for the employee. They need to pay into it. And there was once upon a time when we did reimburse the copay, so in effect, I'm not paying anything until I go to the emergency room or I had more serious things. And I just don't think, given the constant increase in benefits, that that's the wisest pace to set.
And then there was another one that we had where, let's say a husband and a wife both worked at two different companies. They kept our policy even though they didn't do it. And then the theory was we were paying for something we weren't getting. Then the question is could we come out where we could pay them something and have them go onto their wife's insurance or something like that? Because it was a cost savings to us.
You know, we don't do that anymore, and I will tell you when we got rid of it, because I actually think that happened before I came on as city manager, it wasn't a whole lot of change. So what we found was we were probably paying out people who were already going to be on somebody else's insurance. You know what I'm saying?
Well, but the idea was to try to save us.
Well,
I'm not saying we didn't get taken advantage of
Right,
regularly.
yeah, but that was the case, like, you know, a great example, and I'm sure you would tell yourself, Essie's never been on our insurance, but once upon a time, whether she was or not, we paid her this little benefit. Well, she was never gonna be on our insurance, why are we paying her money?
But
That would be the question.
But there was a time where we paid it anyway. In other words, we
I know, and I
paid
guess
for
my
services
point
we
is,
weren't getting.
I would not.
Except for our experience ratio. Our loss ratio is based on our totality, not based on the number of employees.
And Angela, feel free if you have anything to chime in on here, this would be where you want to talk.
Oh, yeah,
But,
we're all shy here, so hold back.
yeah, so, I mean, it's just the balance, the council if the council wants the employee to directly benefit differently, then that's what we need to ask about. But the privileges that you remember are long gone. I mean, I'm talking about some of them more than, 6 years ago.
Okay. No, that's no problem.
So
I mean,
maybe-
I like $100,000 savings, I just wanna know what I'm buying.
But at least, we can have the comparison for the premium and the copay and all that. At least like a comparable with what we currently have, so.
Well, and what is it compared to other cities, right?
Yeah,
So-
yeah, I mean, maybe saving us $100,000 and jacking up.
Yeah, well, now, it won't change for the employee. No,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, I mean,
The question may
a
be.
good question.
Yeah, it's a good question, I'm glad you asked that.
that's my
We're not,
point.
it doesn't cost them more.
I mean,
The question on the table would
the
be,
coverage.
would you want it to cost them less? In other words, you
Not,
share the savings.
Well, I think
at
if
some,
make that
at some
decision-
point, yes, but then not right, not right now.
Well, the current scenario is getting a little tough,
Right.
right? So, any comments? I mean, I realize y'all are being, polite.
I have a question. When you spoke about, the company, asking personal questions and getting that personal information, does that have anything to do with pre-existing conditions?
Yes.
Whether they can be covered?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I mean, once you're on the insurance, your pre-existing condition isn't I mean, it just, the insurance doesn't recognize
I mean,
whether you had it before or after, you're just currently covered for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is unlike
from one
us.
insurance to another insurance.
That's right. The insurance company already know everything about you and what you're paying, and when you sign up for it, they get all of your stuff. So they keep it to
Okay.
themselves, obviously. But let's say you were taking insulin, and that was something that was covered under the policy, for an example. Then immediately it tracks over to
Under
us, and that would be something they would look
With the
at.
with your previous insurance, when you're changing from one insurance company to another, that policy is still the same, that if you had to have this condition, then you would still be able to get coverage.
Yes, the only time that potentially could change is sometimes a new employee, somebody that was just hired, sometimes there is a delay.
It's higher, okay.
But my understanding of some of the national healthcare stuff is they put a lot of limits as to whether or not a pre-existing condition could be excluded, right? So most of those were adopted, and that's been part of the policy of late. So old school is, they would not cover your stuff if it was a pre-existing condition. It wasn't covered at all.
Right.
No
Yeah,
matter who you
because
worked for.
the way it gets absorbed now is, if I have an employee with a pre-existing condition that gets hired, well, next year, when you come around to renew the medical, insurance for the city, it's gonna change your premium. Because they acknowledge that they don't tell the person they can't be insured, it just changes the premium you pay as a city. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it does, and plus the rule is that if you've been on a group health insurance plan, that the pre-existing condition doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't, right?
So, and the world has changed on those rules. I mean,
Yeah,
the
sure.
federal- The federal thing
Federal ones, yeah.
offers a whole lot more benefits now than it ever has, I think. So whether you like it or not, it's just reality. But anyway, if you get a chance, review it, ask the questions. Let's go ahead and submit questions to it. And then if something shows up a little odd, just CC everybody so we kind of know what the question is. Any additional comments? Miss Dorothy, you got any more?
An hour.
Okay. Did she say she had one?
I think it's about, she's just recognizing the hour.
Oh, you're telling me my time's up. Okay, big difference. All right. Miss Knight, do you have any questions?
I'm about to run out of battery power, so I think it's time to wrap it up.
See, that's how you guys are staging this. You're doing the iPhone's gonna run out at 9:30 whether I'm talking or not. All right. I get it. I see how y'all are. What I'm gonna recommend on.
If we can get 3 and 4 real quick.
Yes, ma'am. It was just gonna be a basic discussion now, because most of you just got the book and have not had it very long. Is that right?
Last Tuesday.
The last one?
Last Tuesday I sent it out.
Right. Well, they hadn't had a lot of time to look at it. I mean, these are fairly big books. So, you've got the 3 proposals here, Waste Pro, Republic, and Advanced. We kind of got a little spreadsheet as to what their pricing is. Take a look at those, read those. Our existing contract's up in October-ish. And
Can I just point out 2 things? if
Sure.
I may? I did want to say, so I've had some conversations with the companies, and even saying it out loud, it sounds remarkable to me, to our point earlier about pricing. If the council selects Waste Pro, if you eliminate both recycling and bulk, the monthly service charge is $19, okay? Currently, we pay like 29 something. Now, and the Republic, when we asked them specifically about recycling and bulk, it only went down to 26 per month. Do you know yours off the top of your head? Okay. What would yours be per month if you got rid of recycling?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, good. I hadn't gotten that response back. So I feel like, having discussed sanitation so many times with the current council, price is a driving factor. Service level is another driving factor. So I just wanted to, that's not gonna show up in your proposals, because Waste Pro did not submit considering that option. So I would need to hear back from Advance what their price per month would be if we eliminated, and I wanna reiterate this to be clear, we eliminate recycling and bulk. Now, that doesn't mean that as a city, we might not put in an iteration of bulk pickup through our Public Works Department.
which is what it used to be.
Yeah, which is what it used to be years ago. In fact, yard waste used to also be picked up by Public Works, right? So that's just something to know in terms of the recycling and bulk. So one of the things that we would ask you to consider is the council, are you individually comfortable eliminating recycling and bulk? because the price doesn't matter if we can't decide on a service level.
Well, and remember, recycling on a global basis is no longer cost effective, they're just throwing it away. So we're paying for them to throw the garbage away anyway, and outside of the fact that you're feeling good about it, doesn't really solve anything. You know, at some point, you know, there might be a global change where those recyclables have value again, or somebody's figured out how to build a better mousetrap, and then, you know, but you make that change at a later date.
And just having had a pre-bid meeting with some of the sanitation providers, I just want to reiterate, I'm not saying it's true or not because I don't have the facts. They would suggest that they are recycling still, but it's just so much more expensive that there's no value to them in recycling. They recycle because it's part of the contract or it's part of their service, but the price point for them as a provider leaves no room to make money. It's simply costing them more. So I do want to just sort of share that caveat.
I have a question, you know.
Pickup would be, I'm sorry, the bulk pickup would be, at a cost to the, citizens.
No, the bulk pickup would go back to being public works. That's just part of your traditional City of Morrow services. There's no cost to you. We might put some notification requirements on there, so if you're throwing couches away, you know, somebody ought to be able to call in and say, hey, I got a couch to pick up, versus just chucking the stuff out there and expecting us to show up.
Well, isn't that gonna cost to take to a landfill?
Yes.
It
And the
does,
cities are
but
gonna absorb.
we used to run that, and also we can look at the cost of how much are we able to reduce from getting the contractor to do that versus having in-house.
But, and also remember this, is if you look at it the old way, irrespective of what it cost us to dump it, we provided a service to our citizens. Then we changed and added it to our garbage service, and then we charged them for it. Well, technically, you can call it a tax increase because you're paying for a service you were getting for free yesterday, or 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever.
And I lived here then, but can't remember. Are you saying we didn't pay for bulk pickup then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just part of the service. But I do think, you know, we ought to have a scenario that says, you know, if you're gonna drop off something pretty big, you know, then you ought to at least give us a heads up that it's there. We realize not everybody's gonna do that, but a lot of our citizens are pretty courteous, you know. So you drop a couch out, I'd like to.
Well,
But by putting that
Well,
in place,
You need to say,
Go ahead, Dorothy.
Okay, but you're saying that there's gonna be a limit on how often and how much you can put out there?
I don't think the limit's any different than what you have right now. I'm just looking for a little bit of, and the answer is, I'm just looking for a heads up, right? Just simply because if it's our, you know, if we got a contract where somebody's picking it up, that's on them. You know, if we're picking it up, just simply because it's more cost effective to run a full route system, I just want a heads up that somebody dropped off something decent sized, you know, so that we're not sending the people who can't pick the couch up. You know, let's get the right people and the right equipment out there, because we can. Why not?
but by changing the source of pickup on the bulk pickup, can we put some regulation in place that, you know,
Yeah.
something, you know, Sunday, then thing like that.
Yeah, the
So-
dates and the
so
pickups, that becomes
by-
normal. We had that for a while.
I live in a
Like, so I didn't-
neighborhood where quite a few individuals with the bulk service that they're paying for in their bill now, if bulk is picked up on Monday, we've got stuff that's sitting out from, you know, Friday evening, Saturday morning,
And
until
that,
the beginning of the week.
yeah,
So
Mike,
we can't assume, you know, we do have citizens who are conscientious. The lion's share of citizens are conscientious, but we still have to provide rules, whether, to your point, Mayor, if it's calling in advance and citizens understanding that calling in advance doesn't mean a week in advance and you sit it out.
I get it, and that was part of the discussion, and I've seen some of the pictures. We realize there's some folks that really don't care what we think. And I think there is especially with the new arbitration process that we have, I will be surprised if we can't reach out and come to a negotiated agreement with those people. And if we fail to do that, I don't think they're gonna like our answer. You know, that means if you're gonna take advantage of this city, you're gonna take advantage of your neighbors, and you're gonna have your yard look like that, then we're gonna have a discussion with you that is gonna give you a chance to learn the rules. And failing to do that, you're gonna have a discussion that might either require you not to get the service, right? We'll discontinue pickup at your house for 90 days until you get a better answer, or we'll take you to court and basically say this isn't, you know, everybody's dumping ground. Not everybody in your family gets to drop off their entire house every week. Just not the way this is set up. But I don't think we have as many of those. I mean, I realize you might have one closer to your house than most. But I think we can, I think we can handle that with some new guidelines that we have. I'll be surprised if we don't catch their attention. That doesn't mean it still might not happen. I'm not saying that, but I don't think it'll happen long. Clark?
One thing that I want to bring it to your attention is if we getting rid of the recycle, the amount of trash gonna be increased for the regular trash. So make sure that you know,
And-
it's covered and then we have any
And
problem
that's
with that.
something that I said earlier on, is like, remember, you still are only gonna have one pickup a week.
Yep. So we have two.
Recycling, yeah, they're
two
still taking
containers.
stuff away,
Yeah.
whatever they're doing with it, it still goes from 2 pickups a week to 1 pickup. So I wanna be clear, we're not replacing recycling with a second trash pickup, to your point. Now you're gonna have 1 day of trash removal instead of 2. And
But
that's
but
different.
one, well now you have, you know, let put it this way. I mean, right now you have 2 trash containers. That you have 2 trash containers to be picked up 2 days a week. Now we've got 1 day pickup. So I mean, how we gonna deal with, you know, put everything in 1 container?
Well, so you can have multiple containers.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah.
pick up to
Okay.
150
Yeah,
pounds or
150
something.
gallons.
150 gallons.
And you can
That's
have-
that's a pretty healthy
Yeah.
container.
Okay.
What's the big roll-off container?
Standard's 95.
95.
DeKalb County's only 65 gallon, y'all are 150.
So
That's
we're
okay.
150 gallons, you can't have more than 5 containers. Because you'll get some of the old school people who don't wanna go out and buy their own container, but they have 5 vessels around the house and they'll set them all out. You know, we've had problems where we've had people that literally would have 20 containers out there, filled to make their 150, you know, threshold. But, so the contract says, and it's been this way in the current contract and 18 years previously with Republic, since we've been doing it, is 150 gallons with no more than 5 containers.
That's cool. It's not, you know.
Well, and they should roll them. I mean, you know, nothing's perfect.
Did we ever, resolve the issue where, you know, they had problems with loose trash in their cans where they would have to physically pick the cans up and dump the trash
Well, my answer to that
into their
is,
bin?
you're probably never going to resolve the issue 100%. You're always gonna have new customers, that come on and, you know, don't know what the rules are, don't abide by the rules when they know what they are. And sort of, I think that's, to the mayor's point is, we have to identify the repeat offenders, deal with them through the new arbitration process, and then if they don't fix it, then deal with them stronger or more strongly through the court system. But it's, you know, right now, it's just everybody's luxury every week. And I think maybe to your point of set up an appointment. And so we know by Friday at noon, we have to know who we're picking up Tuesday of the next, whatever it is.
Well, just bigger items.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
you can run a truck through there pretty quick, but you start throwing couches out there, it takes up that space pretty fast.
Yeah, but the bulk is typically bigger items or a ginormous mountain of smaller items.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Because
but
people
most
will
people's
use it
bulk-
as a third pickup.
Right, but most people's bulk isn't that much. I mean, we got a few people out there that look like they're cleaning out apartments on a regular basis, but the average person on our street isn't chucking out that much.
Well, quite honestly, I would imagine that the majority of people aren't putting out bulk at all. The majority. But those who are, do not just put out 2 items, typically.
So, I mean, again, we can, put up a set of regulation,
Sure.
Yeah.
Something fair, something that gives both sides a reasonable chance to come to good discussions. We realize some households are bigger than others, but the reason for the bulk in the first place was leaves and limbs, those other types of things, maybe somebody throwing something away at their house, so they didn't just do it. But it wasn't, the personal eviction every Thursday, that we know a couple people are taking advantage of us.
Well, now, remember, yard waste isn't bulk, so
I
yard
understand.
waste gets to continue.
Right.
It's the chairs, the table, the couch, I don't know, what other people, a shovel, I don't know.
But at least read what's available, and just kind of understand what it is we have. The pricing sounds really good, right? And then the other one, we have a public works department, not being mean, but if you're not doing half the other stuff, what else are you doing? So, this is a service we provided with the same number of employees for decades. We walked away from it. And I don't, I look at it as I think your citizen is entitled to that service. And I think we have at least that expectation from our public works department. And, they're gonna diligently continue to get back to the level of service we expect. Other questions?
On 3 efforts, do we require the provider to provide the trash can? Because that's the question that we've been asked constantly.
I don't think we do. We don't provide the trash can now,
A recycling can we do, but not the
Right.
trash can.
so that you'd still be
Well-
on your own for a trash can.
Because during our campaign, we hear a lot of people asking, why are we having the service that do not provide the trash can?
Tell them they can get their own trash can at Home Depot, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, and of course, we wouldn't get it for free, I would imagine, you would
Mhm.
almost rent it or buy it, and I guess my fear would be, it'd be more expensive getting it through them than
Yeah.
going down to Home Depot and buying one, I don't know.
And I can sit here and tell you that I've never had
So
somebody
we
provide
should
me a trash
understand.
can. I mean, maybe I never asked, but that's just one of those where I never had.
Do you wanna ask?
I know, I'm good. I mean,
Cause we know some cities that'll have their name, their logo on it or whatever, and so you must.
but most
you
of that
must
is
have
for
to pay
people who
for
have
that.
curbside service, right? Curbside
Yes.
service because they want the
Yes.
can where they can tip it and they got a specific style they use. But here,
I'd like to have one for the city, say with the word logo and probably.
Are you making money?
You're just going straight down that. Well, but hesitancy when you provide something for someone, then they don't maintain it. When it's their garbage can, you have a tendency to find the lid. You have a tendency to put the stuff back.
Right.
When it's yours or somebody else's, it's kind of like, hey, your garbage can is laying out there in the middle of the street. You need to go fetch it. And you're like, no. If it's yours, we'll pick it up and toss it away with the rest of them, and we'll hear complaints about that, right? They threw away my favorite garbage can that was rusted out, and they thought it wasn't any good. It was part of the garbage. So you've all heard those before. Okay, I ran 24 minutes past what I told you I would. I know you're ready to go.
I'll subtract it from the next meeting today.
Your minute balance bank.
He
I'll tell you what.
he borrowed a minute from you,
How
huh?
many, how many minutes did you say?
45 seconds is what I said.
No, that's,
But good point. But read the information that's available. We got other things on that list that eventually we'll have to get to. Now that we have a finance officer, we realize we're behind on our budgets. Those become front and center pretty quick. So we will have more than enough to say grace over. And we're going to be re-looking at public works employees. So, obviously we'll be back into interviews, and that's going to take some of our time again. Just hang with us slowly but surely. We're catching on. Any final comments from anybody?
I'm good.
Man, you good?
I'm good.
Miss Dorothy?
I'd like,
All right, Miss.
I'd like to say welcome aboard to Ms. Hudson.
Thank you very much.
And
Happy to be here.
Miss Knight, you good?
I'm good.
All right, we will see you in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Alrighty. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Be safe.
Yes, ma'am. You too. I'm beginning to like you.
Well,